Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the FinCom Summit 2022 by CXO Global Forum. CXO Global Forum is a knowledge sharing platform for all C levels across the globe. And we take massive pride in contributing to the knowledge economy through our League of Extraordinary Thought Leaders. Today, as well, is day three of the FinCom Summit 2022. We're very eager and pleased to announce the next panel discussion, which is going to be on Pakistan's digital landscape. So, scaling the digital ecosystem. The moderator for this session is going to be Ms. Noor Zafer Khan. Noor, over to you.
Thank you so much, Anza, and a very good afternoon, everybody, and Assalamu alaikum to those of you who are joining the CXO Global Forum's FinCom conference. We're really excited today to have this discussion on something that has been on everybody's pulse. We'll go around to the topic a little bit, but first I want to speak about our esteemed panel who are here, who have taken out time to talk about our topic for discussion for the next 1 hour. For those of you who are joining us live on the different platforms of CXO Global, just feel free to put in any comments, any questions that you have, and if not in the live session, then we'll ensure that we come back to the conversation later on as well. So joining me today, we have a panel, and I'm so glad I'm creating diversity to this panel, being the only women here, but we will touch on that aspect as well. I'm joined by Tayseer Ali, who's the CFO of Sada Pay. Tayseer, Assalamu alaikum, how are you? If you can unmute the mic and just let us know how you're doing.
Assalamu alaikum, I'm great. Thank you for having me over here.
Thank you so much for taking our time. Next up, we have Mr. Shahzaib Sanwal, who's the Senior Director, Strategy and Transformation with EY. Shahzaib, how are you doing?
Hello, how are you? This is Shahzaib. Thank you for having me here. I'm looking forward.
Thank you so much. And we're also joined by Shahzad Shahid, who is the Group CEO of TPS Worldwide. Shahzad, can you hear us?
Absolutely. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Noor.
Walaikum assalam. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for taking out the opportunity. The topic that was given to us is, all around Pakistan's digital landscape. I just want to set the scene a little bit for all of you and all of the audience who would be joining us as well, as to what has been going around in terms of the digital landscape. I know everybody has seen it, we've all revolved around it, but today's discussion, we're actually going to talk about, some policy measures that we need to take. So let's look at how the logistics look like, how the numbers look like for a country like Pakistan that has a population of 223 million, the newest numbers that we have, largely males, around 52%, and for 48% now to be exact, female population. And out of that, one exciting figure that when I was doing my research, went around and said that, how many internet users do we have? So that comes around to 62 million internet users, the facts and figures from 2021. What's exciting is that only the COVID years, so post 2020, the internet users in Pakistan have gone up by 11 million. So the 62 that we speak about, a larger chunk of that is coming just from the last 2 years, which is the opportunity also, and that has brought a lot of challenges as well, but we'll talk about that. Another figure that I want to share and set the scene around that is that when we speak about internet users, we are also largely looking at how many broadband, how many mobile users do we have, whether it's telephony, whether it's telecom. So a lot of that discussion, and that hovers around roughly around 173 million of the mobile connection users that we have. And out of that, how many are using 3G, 4G? So just to set the scene now, this is the landscape that we are looking at. The government of Pakistan has come up with a lot of visions the last couple of years. Pakistan's Vision 2025. It was set up 5 years ago when the government came into being. We have seen some implementation take place. And then 2019, we were also introduced just for a little bit about the Digital Pakistan Initiative. Yeah, and all of us got excited about it. However, we have seen that to just fizzle out, maybe in a way in which it has not been implemented so well. So my first question to you, gentlemen, who are an experts in your own particular fields, You are working into a lot of digital implementation as well. And Shahzaib, you are working a lot on transformation. My first question to the panel is, Shahzaib, and I'll put this through to you, is that what is essentially, some of the essential ingredients when we talk about a digital transformation for Pakistan? What are some of the key ingredients that we need as a nation to ensure that that transformation actually also results into, tangible results?
Thank you for the very quite relevant question. So to answer your question, there could be a long debate, but I'll stick to three areas I think that is quite important for a country like Pakistan to transform. Number one is the availability of right digital infrastructure, which is important and is like foundation for any transformation to take place. Number one. Number second thing is the right conducive environment to ensure that all the digital transformation activities embeds into the culture. And third thing is right forward-looking policies. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, that there is a lot of talk and there is some progress on digital initiative, but a lot to be done. And the reason are these three things. We don't have the right infrastructure, we don't have the conducive environment, and we don't have the right policies, human-centric policies to have on board. And likewise, we haven't done as much we have could in the recent years. So that's my synopsis. So if you can just drill down and ask as many questions. I'll just want to be as brief because the time is limited, and I'll keep on answering your questions as you take the discussion along.
Great. No, and I absolutely agree with you. But I'll move on to Tayseer because he's working on a startup that is working around it's all tech enabled and tech based. Tayseer, what would you want to add to the list? We have three already. So we have infrastructure. We have a conducive environment where you let digital transformation take the lead and you encourage adoption of digital technologies into the workforce, and then forward-looking policies पे बाद में आप बात करेंगे detail में, but is there anything else that you would also want to add to the list?
Number one, I think Shahzaib's done an excellent job in summarizing the three main points that we see as lacking within the infrastructure that we have in Pakistan. On top of that, I would like to add the lack of innovation on terms of the players that are involved in the market. So I'm coming from a financial industry background, and I personally haven't seen much of an innovation going into this. This is a problem that I've seen with not just the financial industry, but as a global sort of a Pakistan place, where we still are struggling to identify or differentiate between what is digitalization and what is actually digitization. Whereas we have moved towards digitization a lot, we haven't really moved towards any digitalization. Digitalization is the process of actually connecting a different array or different spectrums or different platforms together where you can offer these services or whatever you're offering to the customer in 1 or 3 clicks. That's about it. So we have moved towards digitization a lot, and we were exposed to the notion that we were somehow digitalized in the COVID days. And to be honest, would I credit moving towards a digitalized kind of a way of working to any of the CXOs? I wouldn't. I would actually credit it to COVID. So I think at a very high level, we need to identify what is the difference between digitization and digitalization. And once we have identified that difference, that will feed into you constructing an infrastructure for yourself. And once that infrastructure is available, policy matters will fall in. The second thing I would like to add, even though you've said that we can discuss policy later, I personally believe that policy is something that has driven your digitalization initiatives in Pakistan. Again, circling back to the lack of innovation from the current incumbents, that is the primary reason that we are still struggling. Pakistan, again, just to mention a few numbers, Pakistan is still the 6th largest unbanked population over here. You have mentioned the penetration that we have on 4G, 5G. You have mentioned the penetration that we have on telephone. You have mentioned the penetration that we have of the internet users. But how come they are not being extended financial services? Because there's a lack of interconnectivity. We now need to understand that, number one, data is king. We now need to understand that we need to help each other share that data over. The policymakers need to see that data as a viable information that needs to be shared between different parties in order to extend a different array of services to our consumers and customers and encourage them to become digital. So that's where, I mean, I'm sorry, I speak very passionately about it. I might come across as that, but this is something that's very close to our heart as Sadhab as well, to define what is digitalization and what is actually just digitization, and it's not interconnected.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And I think I've picked up on a couple of things, Tayseer, from what you were saying, that, in terms of enabling or creating an enabling environment and just finding out the tools. Unfortunately, we're absolutely right, where you're saying that even when we look at the country adoption of the technological advancements, it's mostly around tools. And we are equating that to, actually digitalization, which it is not. We've just found out a way to, interact and network with each other, but it's not having that impact or what we would want to do and want to achieve as part of the global picture is concerned. Shahzad, we can't see you, so if you can turn on your video, I would pose the same question to you, and then we'd hop on to the policies as well, because I think our discussion is also converging around there as well. So Shahzad, your take on what is something that we need for digital transformation in Pakistan?
Okay, first, is my video visible now?
Not yet. I can't see it. Maybe the others can.
Strangely, I mean, it doesn't show it. It's actually showing me my video, so I don't know what's wrong there. But anyway, let's first answer the question, then we'll fix the problem.
Yeah.
So I think it all stems from what is the definition of digital or what is digitization, right? Digitization primarily means access to information digitally, with zero physical interaction to a business entity. So to me, after what Shahzaib and Tayseer have already sort of talked about, I believe there are a few more things that are important to achieve digitization in a country like Pakistan. One is the awareness. There are a lot of people still there who do not understand what is the value of digitization and how it's going to really, sort of improve the prospects of their own businesses and bring cost optimization and lots of other sort of improvement to their businesses. The second area is about, I would say, lack of openness of data. Digitization and innovation are directly linked to the open data. So when Obama took charge in his second term, the first thing he signed was open data regulations. So do we have data from the government agencies? Do we have data from our electricity, telecom, and other entities? If we have that anonymized data, think about the thousands of use cases that, we can create, and how a lot of things can convert into a lot of digital services, which will inculcate the culture of using mobile phone for much more practical uses, which is going to bring the cost low, which is going to control the corruption, which is going to improve the efficiency of the systems, and the cost of these services will be reduced. So lack of awareness and lack of open data, I believe, are two limiting factors beyond what's talked about. From the number sense, we already are talking about 110, give and take, million subscribers of 3G, 4G, 110 million broadband users, which is a massive number, 110 million broadband users. This actually means that, sort of all especially the urban sort of centers already are connected digitally. It's about, is the quality of infrastructure good enough? And this is where we see the PTA is now going after these telecom companies and, forcing them to improve the quality of service, which is key. The second is about, once the quality of infrastructure improves, it's about quality, it's about the content that you can produce. And this is where the data and the awareness are going to be very, very critical beyond what's already talked about. Yeah. Over to you, Noor.
Thank you so much, Shahzad. And I think if I look at, the combining all of your thoughts together, it's just putting us through to a convergence point. And that convergence point is something that I would like to ask you next, is that, there are certain tiers of work that needs to be done. I think we all agree on that. So, the 2-3 broad things that are coming forward is that, what is the role of the telecom providers? Number one, is our services sector strong enough to adopt these digital transformation not tools, but strategies to actually ensure that the services are given to a level in which they're also, benefiting the end users. And then the third is that, where is the data hosted? Are we consuming the data how it's supposed to be consumed? Are our platforms aligned? There are so many strategies and policies, and there's so many startups also that are working on this particular initiative, in which they're saying that, okay, we are creating a services pool which is going to be tech enabled. My question to you, Tayseer, on this is, because you're running a startup that is fintech, right? You are offering these services that have to be so enabled that things are like the end user is benefited, right? But my question to you is that, as a startup founder, how easy or how difficult do you find the access to data? We do say that the government says that there are so many one window operations now. Databases are converged. Nadra is converged with XYZ other platforms, the passport offices, the other ventures as well. Is that really the situation as a startup founder, or do you find it difficult?
Well, unfortunately, that is not the case right now. I mean, data is really hard to get. Yes, we have our own data. The customers that we have gotten, they are providing us, they are furnishing us with their data, which we are churning into some meaningful information for us to offer those products and services over. But is that data readily available across any other side of the road? No, it's not. And that's the problem. Even with the integrations that we have with Nadra, and even with the integration that we have with other players, unfortunately, data is not being shared. And it could be many reasons. It could be reason that people do not, or other organizations do not understand how valuable data actually is. And it could also be the very conservative approach that our regulators, such as PTA, such as State Bank, have towards customer data. And unfortunately, we'll have to move towards, at a very swift pace, we have to move towards anonymizing data and sharing those data over with other customers, with other players in the market as well, in order to broaden the customer service. What we have to realize is we are at a point where we cannot just say that profitability is the only indicator for an organization. It is the customer service that is the key indicator for any organization right now, if you want to have a cemented footprint within the market. And that customer service can only be improved if you can actually get customer data, you can analyze customer data, you can turn it into something meaningful, and then execute on that information that you have. So, for example, our banks have been in place for many, 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 many decades, and they are sitting on this customer data. They don't even know what sort of information or what sort of analytics can they process to offer better services. Why is that? The financial services, as far as the key players in the banks are concerned, they still have a very off-the-shelf approach towards any need of the customer. It's the lack of understanding combined with a very conservative approach from the regulators. And this is exactly what we need to overcome together as industry players to share that anonymized data with each other in order to extend a better service to the consumer. And that is also a catalyst for a mind change when it comes to accessing products and services. Because if you are not being offered a product and service, you might never know about those products and services available in the market. Unfortunately, the permeation between an idea that is conceived somewhere in the Silicon Valley, by the time it matures and reaches Pakistan, usually 5 to 10 years have already been passed. In order to keep up with what's happening across the globe, we now need to change our own mindset, the industry mindset, the regulators' mindset, and take data as king. This was the very first thing that I said when we started conversation, that data is the king, and we need to realize that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think very valid observation, Tayseer, and it coincides with what Shahzad was also saying around, the data in number. It is huge. We're touching around 10 million of 3G 4G users data, and my concern in this is that when we look at the work that telcos are doing, no criticism involved. We're all here to assess and discuss that what is the market practice and then where is the world at as well. We see that a lot of it's my personal opinion. I see that a lot of data is internalized. So they're working on their own products. They're working on, if one telecommunication provider is working on an excellent agri-based app, and they have, offered this across to the rurals and trying to benefit the end user as a process of this, they're still not evaluating the total impact it would have if it was shared. And if more startups like yourselves or others who are working on data analytics come forward and do it. Shahzaib, this brings me to another question that I want to ask you. Do we have any case studies from across the globe, any favorite ones that you have studied, that you think where they were able to create a huge impact in terms of just analyzing and assessing data?
Yeah, we do have a lot of case studies around the globe, primarily if we look into the microfinance sector. So we came across a lot of case studies. But I just want to connect a previous point to this, and then I take this discussion onwards. Leveraging technology and connecting the people is something very important. Like if we pick the case study for the M-Pesa from the Kenya, we replicated here in the Easy Pesa in the Pakistan, but and the thing is that the idea is totally different. They topped up the mobile payment activity, and from that they converted the total, digitized their economy. And once they digitize the economy, they have all the data available to them. And then once they have all the data, they can take the decision accordingly. And you can see the tax net which they have increased with this M-Pesa initiative. That is huge, and now they can use that data to increase their tax net. And so in right now, if you compare the number with the Pakistan and the Kenya's financial inclusion is far better than the Pakistan. And with the large amount of data which is available to them and all the transactions which they can track, you can see how much better decision they have taken over the years. So one of the key case studies I just mentioned is the M-Pesa from the Kenya. So how with the right policies, with the right technology, they enabled the digital payment infrastructure. They empowered the people, and a lot of people got into the financial inclusion sector as well. And then with the central bank control over there and with the right policies, they will manage to have that data and to take a lot of decisions which empower the overall economy. And right now, their digital payments is as good as their GDP. So you can see the lot of change that they've gotten with this one initiative that they had.
Yeah, no, and I know for a fact, and thank you for pointing it out, Shahzaib, that microfinance sector for us is also so huge, with the amount of branch networks and amount of mainstream banks venturing into the microfinance sector has been huge. But again, my point in that too is that the same kind of loan advances that are being circulated into the economy, do we have any kind of impact assessment come out of it in the end and say, all right, how many end beneficiaries were there? What was the rate of recovery? Are we just including, or are we just associating people to come take loan from one microfinance bank and move on to the other, and then take another loan from there and then pay off the first one? So had it been a digital mechanism in which this KYC process would have been shared by all of the microfinance banks on board, things would have been so much simpler. And that is essentially what we are also trying to initiate, I guess, with the regulators that we also mentioned, that we need to create that kind of, let's say, comfort, let's say, trust. Either ways, our data is not secure. I think all four of us who are here on this, we would be stormed with, lots and lots of sales messages and lots of other messages bouncing in our, mobile phones. But Shahzad, my question to you is, is there hope? Is in 5 years, do we look that when we look at the digital Pakistan vision, and when we see, okay, there were a couple of things that were really good in that vision, had it been, implemented. There was a lot of talk around entrepreneurship. There was a lot of talk around, creating tax holidays for people who are focusing their startups on tech. फिर और चीजें भी आती रहती हैं गवर्नमेंट की जो कि करती हैं. I want to talk about PayPal. I want to talk about Rust. But Shahzad, what do you think? Is there hope 5 years down the line? Do we see that there would be a little bit more comfort coming in from different players, both the corporate sector, both the regulators, and both the startup entrepreneurial side to focus on this?
Okay, so first of all, I think we have to be very hopeful and very positive. This is the key aspect, And I am, for one, I'm very, very positive that Pakistan is on the right track. There have been massive changes that we have seen happening in the past few years. Massive. If we talk about 110 million broadband users, 110 million 3G, 4G use, this is actually real data, right? This is not something that's not correct. If we talk about total 105 million wallets plus accounts combined, this is a real data. We may talk about that. No, out of 105, there could be possibly 50 million active, but at least there are 105 million wallets plus accounts combined. So they have been effort, right? They have been, State Bank has come up with, for example, basic banking account. It has been able to come up with EMIs and digital retail banking framework, digital bank framework. We are now seeing a lot of things. So there are certain things which actually have to go step by step. Kenya is a different example. Kenya had a very weak regulatory regime in the banking, So we are, good for good or bad reasons, Pakistan is actually in an axis where we are being watched very, very carefully compared to so many of the other countries, right? We are just in the middle of a situation, and we are in the greatest of this thing. So Pakistan has to look at things prudently, carefully, because a misstep can cause a damage that is much massive, So I tell you what are amazing things happening in the country. Coincidentally, other than being, a TPS and part of a fintech community, I had been chairman of Pasha, a couple of years ago. So I still am very, very engaged with Pasha and, ministries. And I had a long conversations 2 days ago when the PM Imran Khan Saab, gave a lot of IT sector the incentives. And those incentives are going to directly accelerate the growth of IT sector, the growth of entrepreneurship, and the growth of VC funding coming to Pakistan. Removing the capital gain on the startup VCs, massive step. This is going to bring a lot of money to Pakistan in the startup ecosystem. Ensuring, last year an ad hoc action was taken, and the earlier 0% export of IT services, it was turned into a credit regime where we actually have to pay 1% tax and then to submit a lot of documents, and then it will turn into 0%. That's now taken away again. Just 0% income tax for the next 5 years. Massive thing. Freelancers are being now recognized. Earlier, freelancers were actually a community of people bringing $300, $400, $500 million to Pakistan, but not recognized. They could not have a credit card issued. They could not borrow loans. They can go for house loans. They're now being brought under a sort of, a documentary regime, not being taxed, but they have to be part of the community. They have to be acknowledged as they are bringing dollars to Pakistan against an export of service. It's not the home remittance coming into Pakistan. So Pakistan has to really categorize the data properly for it to economically celebrate the success that we are having in the country. We are seeing all the dimensions improving. On the data, being privy to a lot of things, I can tell you this with confidence. Pakistan is going to announce the Pakistan Personal Data Protection Bill in the next few weeks at best. It's already approved at certain levels. It's going to come out very soon. Once the Personal Data Protection Bill comes up, we already have the cloud policy announced already. Good or bad, we now have policy. The uncertainty is gone. The biggest issue with businesses is uncertainty. There is a cloud policy. There is now going to be data policy. The businesses will be able to then decide on what is the right approach to invest, what are the right avenues to make money from. We now have Rast, which is real. The Rast, this digital infrastructure. It is free of cost. You can't charge this transaction. It is P2B done. It is B2B. Sorry, it is B2B done. It is B2C done. And now you're talking about P2M, person to merchants, the third stage. These are all real things. The tax guys are now going after the businesses tier 1 first, giving them a slash on on the GST if they basically send the e-invoice to the FPR. Now we are finding how creative our businesses are in terms of paying taxes. There have been cases of tax evasions, of gaming this whole QR thing there. But the direction is right in my opinion. They are slashing the GST on the purchases, and in return they're actually asking them to document all the payment transactions, which basically means that we will see more onboarding of merchants which actually are willing to take the digital payments because they don't have an option available, and they find the taxes coming low. This is going to support the digital startups coming up, because the startups cannot do anything if people don't want to pay. What will you do? You can't really force people to actually say, 100 rupees ka burger le lo. How often can you do that? How much can you do that? You can't really keep pumping in money just on these crazy deals. It can come once and, rarely, but it can't really be part of the digital adoption. Digital adoption has to be seen as a convenient, secure, efficient mechanism. It's not necessarily a free mechanism. It's not free. If I have to drive to an ATM, there's a cost of doing it. There's a time of doing it, right? It is not free. So I think a lot of things are being happening. The data protection bill is coming up. The cloud policy has been announced now. Just for those who do not know, earlier the government services had to be hosted on the NTC cloud, which is the government cloud. Now they say it is all open. There is no restriction on NTC cloud. Any application can be hosted on any cloud within Pakistan. That's one restriction. But at least now you're talking about people like Multinet, people like Rapid Transit, people like Jazz. They are now going to invest heavily because now they know that a lot of these systems are going to be hosted not necessarily on a government nominated data center, but on any of them, which is where the quality will determine, the customer centricity will determine, the experience will determine who is going to be the best, and eventually the customer, the end users are going to decide about where to basically direct themselves. So I am very, very hopeful, very positive. All the indicators are going in the right direction, and there is absolutely no reason to have any doubt about it. I think not 5 years, mark my word, every year now on will tell you how positive things are happening in Pakistan. If $350 million have come in the VC funding, you have not imagined this can happen to Pakistan.
Yeah,
if you see the global VC players, the US, the Middle Eastern, European, if they are taking interest in Pakistan, this is no joke. 3 years ago, I was meeting people from US, Canada, Europe. They were wary of Pakistan. Pakistan is a sort of is a typical market. We are unsure about going there. Now, because of some Pakistanis coming in, investing there, and I would say Kareem is the first such venture which actually has got sort of unlocked, cracked that sort of taboo, and now everybody sees massive value in Pakistan. I am very hopeful, Noor.
No, that sounds very hopeful to me as well. I mean, I'm gonna do a rundown to that as well, Shahzad. But I'm gonna build up on it, and I'm gonna come to you last. And as to how do we build then the confidence? I think because these kind of stories needs to come out more often. I think one such platform is what Kamal is trying to do with CXO, and we're seeing that a lot of information is going out, which is creating a general overall awareness. But just the fact, as somebody who is an enthusiast, I mean, I would love to find some reports being shared. I would love to have some kind of statistics being shared. You spoke about the VC funding. I think I2I is doing a fantastic job in sharing those statistics with us, so that we see a convergence and we see, all right, this is the data. These were the startups that were able to attract that VC funding. Shahzaib, my question to you is, what are we doing wrong, or maybe something that we need to do right to create awareness around, such opportunities, such discussions? Because here our Pakistani mentality, I'm sorry to say, takes the better of us. ये चीज अगर मुझे पता है, खुदारा मैंने किसी से क्यों share करनी है, right? I know Shahzad has been kind to tell us that all of these things are happening, because this was very recent, 2 days ago, when the premier was visiting the expo as well. But Shahzaib, what do we need to do?
So I was just thinking the same thing when Shahzad was telling the extraordinary initiative which the government has just taken. So that's the supply side which we intend to cover. But what about the demand, the other hand? So if we talk about the numbers, I agree, 80% mobile access user, 50% broadband user. I agree that access divide is getting reduced, but what about the use divide? How much people in the Pakistan can actually go to the Google and write and search something in the English? How much people can? Do you have the numbers? It's even less than 10% of them. And if I convert this into local language, even this number is even less than 1%. Maybe I and you can't do the search in the local language on the Google. So when we talk about all these things on the supply side, we need to also create something on the demand side. And you're right, that is the other part. How we can build up the demand on the other hand, because at the moment we are even less than we every time, and all the startups and all the VC funds, which is good, we project us to be an economy of 200 million people, 220 million people. But we need to identify how the audience sees us. Either we have such sort of people who can engage into some quality production and can produce something, even it is IT export, or that audience see us as a 200 million market where they can come and dump all their funds and can sell their product to us. So we need to identify, number one thing, how to cover that gap, how to reduce this digital divide, the technical term. That is very important. And for that, we need to have two things. Number one, as you just mentioned, digital awareness and how to create that. I'll come to that, and I'll share some case studies, use cases around the globe. And number second thing is very important, is to empower the person. And for that, financial inclusion is very important, to make them the confidence that they can pay digitally and that is secured and that is reasonable considering their socio-economic classes. So what we can do in terms of digital literacy, you can take an example from your neighbor. You can take example from the Iran. So what they did, once all this digital disruption erupted, first of all, they stick to the local language. In order to cater the need of all the market, they developed their own Android-based app Play Store, which is known as Bazaar. And right now, even the content available on the Bazaar is even equal to or more than the content available on the Android Play Store. So first of all, you need to engage the audience. हमारे यहाँ problem क्या है? Like we are those 10% people, we talk in English, we sit in English, we make policies in the English environment, and there is a polarized environment at the moment. Because I see a lot of inequality. There are 10% people, 20% people who have access to all the data sources. They can search in English, they can see the YouTube videos, they have access to an enormous amount of data, and other hand, 80% people can't even search anything. They don't even know how to talk to the machines. So there is a polarized. So what do we need to do? We need to convert all the material and the content available into the local language, which is very important. Pakistan ke andar, if this is our local language, we need to engage that audience कि हमें local जो है content को कैसे develop करना है. अभी तक there is no ask के यार कि app store पे there is no, I didn't come across कि local keyboard की assigning apps क्या होंगी, how we can convert. Even we go to UAE, they all use Arabic. We go to Iran, they all use Persian, but we don't do that somehow. And then for digital literacy, we need to do two things. We need to curtail the regressive levies on the smartphone so that it could become available to everyone. And then we need to educate two basic things. Number one is Google, and number second thing is YouTube. And third thing would be WhatsApp. So they can ask the question, WhatsApp is good, download speed is good, but for the YouTube and why I take Google? Because one have to talk to machine. One have to ask the questions. There should be someone who can answer those two questions. So for that, it's not a huge program. You need one mobile laptop, you need one screen, and you can initiate this digital literacy programs in the school as well. Right now, Telenor has initiated some model e-programs with the name of Talimabad. So idea is to increase the awareness and digital literacy. So coming back to your point, we need to engage the audience. We need to increase the awareness. For awareness, we need to, first of all, again, digital platform, you need to reduce the levies on smartphones so everyone can have access to that. And then you need to introduce some special programs where they can, at least they can learn how to talk to machines, how to speak to the machines. There are more than 40 countries around the globe where half of their population don't even know how to attach any document into their email. We are talking about that economy, and Pakistan is one of that. So it is. And second thing is, when we talk about financial inclusion, we need to give the confidence to like India did. What India did, they included all the platforms into a single platform. So that gives him a lot of confidence. And once I have this confidence, as Shahzad just earlier mentioned, we and Tayseer mentioned, that a lot of people, when we included the financially, they have this insurety that they can pay, and that is economically feasible for them to get paid. So a lot of people will get into the net. So these are two things that how we can reduce. And it is also UN has also made it one of the sustainable development goal number 9, how to reduce the digital divide. So we need to get inspiration from that. We need to devise policies accordingly. Education, the whole ecosystem need to get in line to reduce this digital divide which we have, and which is very important. Thank you.
Sure. No, thank you so much, Shahzaib. I think, very good observations. And I think you're absolutely right that, local language, providing access and just creating that kind of comfort level. A lot of the times we even get intimidated if you're calling a call center. And I have seen, and it's an observation that if we look at a particular SEC who are not educated, जो basic Urdu bhi nahi jante, they are actually struggling to make a call to a call center as well, because they don't know how they're going to respond. Us pe chale, integration ho gayi, but you're absolutely right, just to create that awareness. And I think we do see glimpses of that happening. I think a lot of the LYP जो हो रहा है, National Financial Literacy Program, उसको जिस तरीके से run out कर रहे हैं, the fact that they have tried to again digitize the process in making that an app, and then making youngsters go through that learning and that teaching methodology. There is some change, some evolution, but I guess still a lot more to do. Tayseer, this brings me to you. A lot of the policies that Shahzad has kindly shared with us, without any hesitation, they all seem very conducive to me, to be honest, for encouraging more startups and more innovation to take place, right? What would you think that, what should be our greater adoption as a country to inculcate, more incubation? I head a career development center of TMUC, Pakistan. So we have students all across Pakistan, and they're studying foreign qualifications, and they have different disciplines. What do I need to do as an academic lead to ensure that there has to be some kind of convergence in which I am channeling the energies of my student towards pursuing entrepreneurship as a career option, because that is where the real scope is. What would your advice be?
So, well, first of all, I would like to sort of continue with what Shahzad said, and I'm one of those people. In fact, we at Saadape are a group of those people who share his hope for the country and how it's going to move forward in terms of its digitalization. And I would mention one thing, that I do believe that this digitalization is again regulator led rather than the market led, because in my opinion, market has failed to innovate and give that innovation over. The points that Shahzaib has made about how to include everyone and give that confidence over are extremely valid, and this is something that is also very core to what we are doing at Saadape. So, and then moving on how to actually encourage people to take on this entrepreneurship, I would categorize this into one key element, and I think we need to change the mindset of that old school that the bottom line number means everything. as far as their business is concerned. I know it's going to be weird sounding coming from a CFO, but at the end of the day, the bottom line number actually churns into a very attractive number once you have a very high rate of customer satisfaction. And in order to be very customer centric, you need to know what the customer requires. And in order to know what the customer requires, you need to understand how to interpret customer behavior. That's point number one. Secondly, the clear-cut message, if I was walking down on the road and if I was stopped and asked by a youngster that what do I need to do to bring that sort of thought process, I would say design thinking. Anything you do, everything you do needs to revolve around design thinking. What is your customer experience? What is your customer interface? How does the customer react and interact with you and all the product and services? If you look at what I've said, you would circle back to the same thing. One bank having two apps, why? One organization having two different products, why? Because if you have a flawed customer interface, you have a flawed customer understanding. So and as a result, you're still bound by your old-fashioned thinking of we just need to make that bottom line handsome. You're so stuck in it that you, again, circling back, have forgotten what digitalization is and just keep on keeping up. You're trying to keep up with the trends by just digitizing.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would say that in order to summarize, number one, design thinking, absolute design thinking. And number two, develop skills to understand and interpret data. And then use those two tools to bring that customer satisfaction level for your organization, for everyone else. So that's what I would, walking down the road, that's what I would say to anyone who comes across me.
Great. No, and I completely could not just resist myself and unmute myself and say that, yes, why do we have two apps for the same, for performing almost the same functionalities? Because, I think that came around from the fact when making an app was the coolest thing to do. So, you flood somebody's smartphone with, 10 million apps, and they don't also know that, what is the usability of it. And I guess that has also created some kind of unrequired competition. If it's a Me Too app, if I can have one app perform the same services, I would rather shift on there. Shahzad, this brings me back to you, because we have around 10 minutes left, so we'll be taking your final thoughts on this particular thing. We did mention some kind of payment mechanism as well. So we know that there's been a lot of discussion, especially when we talk about the demand and the supply side, when we talk about the freelancers bringing in a lot of money into the country. But then, the payment mechanisms are not there. We have an unbanked population still. Our startups, a lot of freelancers are, still, following this Hawala Hundi procedure of getting the money from here to here. I don't know if it's an appropriate platform to say that, but yes, that's happening, right? And then we have FATF, hovering around our heads as well. So when we talk about all of these policies that you just mentioned, which are going to create an impact, I think, yes, the tax regime, yes, I think that's a really, really positive thing. How people use it, how we're going to monitor that, another story. The data protection bills, yes, finally GDPR coming into the country, and finally, us creating awareness that, this data that is ours is, for sale. And then, where is the accountability coming across? But I want you to really, really, close the discussion and say that, yes, we are ready for, digitalization. But what is it that are some of the low-hanging fruits which, need to be implemented ASAP? We are on the right track. We don't want to lose this momentum. Everything is working, checkbox, but, what do we do with the demand and supply? What are some of the quick low-hanging fruits that we can hop on very quickly as a nation, as an economy?
I think there's an inertia of entrepreneurship and startup. Do not let it derail. Fast track it. Enable it. The brilliant youth in Pakistan, the amazing creative people in the country will crack open a lot of use cases which may not be nationwide applicable, which may be applicable to one city, one town, one gully, one mohalla, or possibly global. Keep that happening. And this is why I said that in my very first question, this is why I said awareness and data. If I know for a fact that how much is electricity consumed in my neighborhood, and I create an app about it, and that app is used by my neighborhood, and these guys can say, Shahzad, you actually are consuming 20% higher electricity compared to your own neighborhood. And possibly because in this 5 to 8 p.m., we have got a very high sort of consumption. You need to check. Possibly we can start to conserve electricity. This is the power of data. And just giving you one example, right? This is one example only for one small sort of community of houses. There can be thousands and thousands of use cases, and there'll be a lot of monetization. There'll be a lot of job creation. There'll be a lot of digitization, and we will see fewer roads, lesser oil, and you can go on and on and on. So basically, I think this is one thing that has to happen. The second is about the fintechs, the way the fintechs have been promoted. I think this needs to be made sure, because fintechs mean they actually are tapping the customer segment, which were in the past 70 years, banks could not tap.
Yeah.
Because the fintechs have a specific use case, a very focused customer segment, and they made sure that the customer is the key. So what Tayseer said about Sada Pay and what Shahzaib talked about, these innovators will for a certain segment create a Punjabi language or an Urdu language or another language app, which they know that this is their customer segment. Banks create a product which is for the country. The forms primarily are in English, and they usually speak English, and this is the way they are. They're not meant for those tier 3 towns where people have hardly 5,000 rupees to put in the bank. They don't entertain them.
Yeah.
So the people who have to entertain them, these going to be these startups, the fintechs, those entrepreneurs which are going to create that. So fintechs have to be supported a lot in terms of. So I tell you one problem. I'm sure SadaPay, sees the problem, and about openness of data, openness of banks, for example. Banks are not very happy, to be very honest, about collaborating with fintechs. They may say that they want to collaborate, but I think the journey that it takes to connect to a bank is months long, and one can sense, because the banks are trying themselves to basically do some, experiments in the digital side. So the banks.
I would second that, Shahzaib. Sorry, cutting in, but I would second that. That is absolutely the case. That is absolutely the case.
So why Europe has come up
intimidating the banks over here.
So banks have come up with, Europe has come up with PSD2, the same reason. There has to be collaboration. See, nobody's going to steal money from the banks. Banks are going to continue to be the guarantor of the money and whatnot. But the use cases are much better done by these startups who know the customer, who are not going to entertain the entire world, who are very specific. These startups don't have commercial, agri, corporate, SMEs, retail, cash management. They have got possibly 1 or 2 use cases, and they know they will be customer centric, customer oriented, and they will do their thing. I think this is primarily the last thing I would say is focus on education. Pakistan has a dearth of it, and I'm sure Shahzaib and Tayseer will second me for that. TPS today is now from 380 people 2 years ago to it's now a 550 people company, but it takes a lot of pain to hire people. It's a very slow process, and the people we hire, unfortunately, have to be trained for the next 6 months to really become.
Can I add in here? Focus on the right skills that are needed. I think that is so important, and coming from an employer like TPS, Shahzad, this is really, really important.
And what is right skill? Sorry, what is right skill?
Precisely. So that is exactly the kind of question that I had posted to Tayseer as well. But go on. But we'll have to be a little bit quick.
So there are 2 areas. I think this is critical. There are 2 areas. The analytical thinking is inculcated from the primary grade. You don't do that when somebody is doing a bachelor's program. You cannot become a blockchain program or an AI guru just by a 6 months program. We have to understand that somebody has to be a statistician, a mathematician, has to have amazing analytical skills to actually do AI and these sort of stuff. We need to understand that and acknowledge that. We are the guys who, even in our intermediate, most people do come from metric system, they don't come from the O levels. These do not, there is not a culture of teaching them statistics. Statistics comes from when you get into undergrad program, too late in the day. So programming has to be part of primary school curriculum. Programming. This brings
very apt. Very
Uh,
apt. Thank you
second,
so much.
And
Go ahead.
same, the undergrad program, same thing. Just one statistics again, key statistics. 25 to 30,000 IT graduates come in every year. Hardly 5,000 are employable. So the focus now, primary focus now that the sector is doing, and I'm part of it, is to enable the 20,000 graduates of IT who have done 16 years of education but are not considered skilled enough to be hired. We are focusing on them, on how can we have them on board, because possibly 6 months of effort on 3 months of effort or 6 months of effort on them can flood the market with possibly 100,000 skilled resources in the next 2 years. So this is from my side.
Great. No, thank you so much, Shahzad. Shahzaib, you wanted to say something, your low-hanging fruits.
So I will not take much time. Just I will add on to just Shahzad note, because we are running short of time. So with all these areas they define regarding education, I agree to that, and I just want to add that once we are inculcating this analytical thinking and programming in early education, we also need to add lateral thinking as well, because we also need to enhance the innovation part as well. Because once we define only all things in the binary numbers 0 and 1, so then at that time thinking out of the box and something lateral thinking that we need to be also catered as well. So just to add that as well, and I will say that I think Noor, and maybe you are the expert in this area from your background, that you need to tell us that what are the right areas for the right education, for the right skills for the courses to have these skills inculcated in the early education. So that's my comments and
absolutely. No, I'll come around to me last, but first I want to hear from Tayseer that what are the low-hanging fruits, Tayseer? We're all saying that okay, the inertia is there for entrepreneurship. Good idea to make a fintech startup and then sell it off?
For me, there are a lot of things that have been mentioned. They're very close to my heart as well. But I personally think one of the key low-hanging fruit for us is to just keep going in the momentum that we are going in. We keep encouraging startups, not just in the fintech side, but we keep encouraging startups on the ed tech side as well. And that sort of push in the edtech market and the fintech market will bring in the financial inclusion that we want, will bring in the level of education that we want. Let's open up the universities of the world to the masses of Pakistan through digitalization, through technology, through your mobile phones, through your internet. And then let's see them grow. Because at Sadhak, I'm working with so many engineers who have been self-taught. And that did not happen from from a structured course. They were self-taught, these guys, because they had access to that information through digital means. So for me, I would say push the startups in the right direction, help them through policy, help them to make that difference, and that should do the trick for us, inshallah.
Super. Thank you so much, Tayseer. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring this very, very interesting panel discussion on the digital landscape of Pakistan. Let me quickly, I think it's important for anybody and for all three of you who have invested your time in speaking to our audience who will be watching this live or maybe watching it later. Let me just wrap up the discussion very quickly. I think a lot of the discussion that we had today was around building a proper, robust digital infrastructure, which means that you're not only making a conducive environment, but you're also looking at developing forward-looking policies. We spoke about a lot of innovation where there's potential, and we should be focusing on that. And then learning the difference between digitalization and digitization. Very important that we create that demarcation between the two. I guess what we also discussed was access to information and how much data is out there ready for us to grasp. But then what are we doing in converging that data and putting it into services that are required by the people? I think we also looked at a lot of key case studies from all across the globe, and how can we replicate those or maybe better those for Pakistan. I think some of the more conducive policies that Shahzad spoke about were around, the new tax regime that is coming, a 0% income tax on financial services. Freelancers would be actually benefiting a lot from that. We have a Pakistan Personal Data Protection Bill, which is also due to come out. The cloud policy is already in place, and with processes and systems in place like the RAST, we are hoping that it's going to further streamline the processes. I guess what we also discussed in terms of how can we reduce the digital divide between the demand and the supply side? So, focus on customer satisfaction and data, and offer services that the customer is actually required of you. I think a lot of discussion around local language interaction and implementation into the digital services that we have. Low-hanging fruit, if I talk about that, I think is also that there is an inertia of entrepreneurship in the country, and we need to focus that our young generation who is more on the academic side learn the skills that are needed for them to thrive well into the digital sphere. And that has to be, just more analytical thinking skills. Also looking at design thinking, understanding empathy, understanding ideation, and how to focus and convert your ideas into tangible services. And then finally, I think we also mentioned that in the tech space, if you want to pursue, and the future is really bright for anybody who's coming in from a fintech or an edtech startup background. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm very grateful to ACCA for giving me the opportunity to moderate today's session. They're the knowledge partner for the FinCom, and obviously to CXO Global, who have facilitated this session for us. Thank you so much, Shahzad, Shahzaib, and Tayseer, for taking out time. It has been an invaluable discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noor. And we must acknowledge that you are